Court filings show that hundreds of migrant children still remain separated from their parents. Of the 2,551 separated from their parents at the southern border, 559 still are in government custody. 386 have parents who already have been deported, and officials have heard from 299 parents in the last week. However, they don't have any information for 26 parents and still have not filed a plan to reunite any of the 559 remaining children with their families. Meanwhile, a federal judge in Washington ordered a plane carrying a mother and daughter to return to the U.S. while their deportation hearing is underway. U.S. District Judge Emmett Sullivan called the removal pretty outrageous and threatened to hold Attorney General Jeff Sessions in contempt. ACLU attorneys were notified of the removal of the woman and her daughter during recess and requested that the judge delay the deportation. Upon arrival in El Salvador, the pair was sent back to Texas, this according to DHS. Gene Robinson, this is a problem that persists despite all the spotlight, all the media attention over the last couple of months on this child separation. They still have hundreds of children without their parents at the border.
You know, this is a crime. This is really a crime that has taken place. You call it kidnapping, call it whatever you want. But it is beyond outrageous that 559 children remain separated from their parents, and that the government knows where apparently nearly 300 parents are and has spoken with them, but has no plan to reunite the children with their parents. How can that be? How can that possibly be? And I believe, I hope that since this administration wants to behave in this way, I hope other judges, perhaps the judge in San Diego who's in charge of that case, acts the way Judge Sullivan did and says, wait a minute, we have laws in this country, and those laws are going to be enforced, and I'm going to start holding people in contempt of court, in criminal contempt of court, which is where they are. That's the situation now. This is just outrageous.
And I guess case by case, there's legal recourse when we know of a case, Susan. But to put this in pretty plain terms, it appears our government has gone rogue with hundreds of children, kidnapped them, is currently abusing them, and in this case decided to deport one and remove the child in the middle of a hearing. It doesn't feel, this doesn't feel normal, and this feels illegal and definitely un-American.
It absolutely is, Mika. And on top of that, we see that this administration was not even close to being prepared for what they wanted to even do, which is why we're in this disaster that we have. I wish that the First Lady would take her parents, her parents who are newly citizens, down to the border and see what's happening to those children. Now, that's something that maybe that they could relate to, seeing how hard it is and the struggle that people have coming into this country. And don't forget, a lot of these were trying to come in legally. These weren't just all people trying to come in illegally, but this is not America. This is not how we treat people anywhere, nonetheless at our border.
John, following up on what
incredible.
Susan just said, I mean, the Trump administration wasn't close to being prepared for the ramifications of this policy. They were warned about it by HHS officials, saying that it would have a devastating effect on children. And we've seen now that they're so desperate to try to clean things up that they've now told the ACLU, hey, you guys be in charge of it. You handle it. But I will say yesterday's another good example of how the ACLU has stepped up in this disaster and has done remarkable work and continue to do remarkable work day in and day out, not for the benefit of liberals, for the benefit of children and for the benefit of America's reputation across the globe.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, sort of linking all this together this morning, you've said kind things about two very different American institutions. One is Ronald Reagan and the other is the ACLU. Rarely do the twain get linked together and pointed out as working in alliance. But that's what the country at its best, and this may sound sentimental, but the hell with it, because it's actually true. The country at its best is this combination of forces that may or may not like each other, that may or may not work together in the morning, but will in the afternoon. That's the nature of compromise. The ACLU really grew out of the Red Scare of the 19-teens. We just heard that this isn't America. Unfortunately, this is America. We shouldn't blink. We shouldn't shy away from the darker aspects of our past, whether it's fighting a civil war over slavery or Woodrow Wilson resegregating the federal government and curbing civil liberties during the First World War, all the way through FDR and Japanese internment. One of Ronald Reagan's first political speeches, in a way, came in a ceremony to honor the Japanese American soldiers who, despite internment, had gone and fought so heroically for the Allied cause. He went with Joseph Stilwell to Southern California to present a medal to a family of a soldier who had died. And ultimately, President Reagan, 40 years later, would be the president who apologized for that great national sin. So this is not celebratory, but it is a sign that I think fair-minded people will look at the panoply of human experience and say, this side gets it right here, this side gets it right there. And that's what the country's supposed to be. We're not supposed to demonize either somehow out of the public square. We have to be in this together.
We do, and Donnie, how fascinating it is that over this first half hour today, while we look at the abuses of this administration and comments that certainly sound like calls for white supremacy, look at the vast array of voices that have pushed back, even with Reagan, beyond the grave at that sort of backward thinking. You've Ronald Reagan to the ACLU, to Guy Benson, to a federal judge, actually saying, turn that plane around and get them back in the United States of America. We still have due process in America, whether Donald Trump believes in it or not.
Yeah.
So for all the negative, there's a hell of a lot of good out there to see too. Good conservatives, liberals, independents pushing back at these abuses.
Yeah, Joe, it's interesting. I bet you get some of the same thing. You've said on this show a lot, and I've tried to say it also, that despite how terrifying things are right now, our system holds. And even with that guy in the White House, these checks and balances do work. And it's just why the founding fathers were so brilliant. You know, what's going to really be the tell is in November. And if anything, if there's any harbinger based on what happened the other day, if that same, Mike Allen brought up a brilliant point leading into the show, that if that same math, if the same swing that happened in Ohio in that one district happens across the country, we'll pick up 43 seats. So I think the American people will speak. I want to just go back to the Reagan thing, and I said this to Willie, and it would be interesting if you put up a clip of W, of his father, of Obama, of Clinton, of the last presidents. The tone, the calm of when you listen to Ronald Reagan speak versus the complete opposite. This is the first president in our lifetime when he comes on the air, as opposed to the calmer in chief. The calmer in chief is the anger in chief, is it just unnerves you every time he speaks. And just listening to Reagan beyond the words, which were so heartwarming and reaffirming, his overall tone, understanding that job in that office is every time you get up there is to somehow put your arms and bring 300 million people together versus every time Trump gets out there, beyond his words, the visceral quality, the tone of which he speaks pulls us apart. And it's a sad, comforting look back that reminds us of how we live today. with
Yeah,
our
it's easy,
president.
almost easy to forget. It hasn't always been that way. You don't
Yeah.
have to go back that long to see it. Joe, I just want to underline one thing about the family separation, which is that the entire rationale for this, and we've heard it publicly from the president, to the attorney general, to people out of the White House, was that this would be a deterrent to people coming to this country illegal, that we'd have fewer people coming. They would see they might be separated from their children. Jeff Sessions said that out loud. Well, this week we got the numbers in about family members arrested at the border. The difference is marginal at best. Along the border last month in July, 9,258 family members were arrested. That was down from 9,434 in June, so by about 150 people. In other words, this plan that separated families and caused all this stir that was supposed to be a deterrent has not been a deterrent.
It's all a sham. Everything is a sham that Donald Trump has been saying about immigration. And we've talked about it, Willie, haven't we, for a year and a half, that actually throughout Donald Trump's campaign, that this invading horde of illegal immigrants to America that requires the building of a wall, that requires family separation, that requires all of these harsh measures.
Yeah.
In fact, were proven to be lies by the statistics now of Donald Trump's own government,
right,
and before of the federal government, that showed that there was actually a negative net immigration pattern from Mexico. More people going back to Mexico than coming into the United States, Mika.
Yeah.
Well, Donald Trump was running for president of the United States. It was all, I can't say this enough to my friends and family members who are Trump supporters.
Yeah.
If you look at Donald Trump's own government websites and look at the trends through the years, everything he told you about this invasion of illegal immigrants in 2016 was a lie.
Yeah.
More people going back to Mexico than coming into America. And Mika, this morning still, you have young children ripped from their parents. Also, Donald Trump can make a cheap political point.
I get that.
And where is Ivanka, as you always say?
Nowhere.
Why isn't she doing something to fix this? Where is Melania, who yesterday had her comfortable parents use chain migration to come to this country, while little children, while infants, while toddlers are still separated from their families on the border? I don't get it.
Well, and also the media needs to step up, and I understand, our colleagues over at Fox News, there are shows in the evening that exist with opinion, of course, but where are the guardrails when you talk about data that is clear, about the numbers? I mean, these Laura Ingraham and her white supremacy speech, I'm still at a loss as to how that made it to air. At some point, there have to be guardrails. Where's the management here? These are hosts with a direct line to the president. We know about that because Trump tried to do that with us. And as soon as we started saying no to things that were clearly wrong, racism, bigotry, whatever else, and he couldn't get us to sort of parrot exactly what he wanted us to say, and found that his strategy with us didn't work. He just gets angry at us on Twitter now, but he doesn't talk to us because we don't actually mimic what he says. But these hosts do. They do. And that, if they have weak character and they can look in the mirror, that's their problem. But where's management? Who heads up Fox News? Who can allow this to happen and say that we're a news network?
I mean, again, we're talking about, it's one thing if you have different views on immigration policies on the border.
For sure, it's complicated.
If you have a different view on abortion, on same-sex marriage, but when you have a speech that is just, it lines up directly with what white supremacists say, I do think at that point, Mika's question is a fair question to ask. Where is management? Who approved a white supremacist speech to go on the air yesterday on Fox News in prime time? Who's approving that? What does Rupert Murdoch think? What do his sons think? What do his family think? Do they think that is America? They're in this country from from outside of America. Do they think that what she said last night was okay? Do they think, or Wednesday night, do they think that throwing the dog whistles out and instead just appealing directly to white supremacists is where they want that network to
That's
go?
their business model?
That's
nice.
You know what? That is, as John Meacham says, that may be a good starter for a night or two. It's a terrible finisher. And I can't believe that the management there, the Murdochs, and the people that own News Corp are happy that white supremacist speeches are being given in prime time.
And a siren to Fox management. If your hosts are so desperate to be close to the president, so desperate to be close to power that they can't ask questions and they can't use their brains and know between right and wrong, what do you have exactly in your programming? That's a question we're asking.
Joe, I'd also
Still ahead,
challenge
why
you.
this family separation crisis may not be something Democrats will be able to capitalize on to retake the House this November. Axios co-founder Mike Allen will explain the messaging problems that both parties are having with typical go-to issues. Those details are next on Morning
And
Joe.
Donnie Deutsch will finish his sentence.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.